and welcome to Gardening Australia. I'm here on Cockatoo Island, the largest island in beautiful Sydney Harbour. This place has a rich and layered history. During the 60,000 years prior to European settlement, Cockatoo Island was a meeting place for Sydney's First Nations peoples, who know it as Warriama. From the mid-19th century onwards, it was used as a convict jail and work camp, reformatory school and shipbuilding yard and dock. And in 2010, it was added as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. While I take a walk around the gardens here, we have got a full plate of stories for you this week, so let's dig in.
I love cold frames because they help me grow and maintain a steady supply of veggies no matter what the weather. But if you thought they were just for the colder months, well, I'm going to show you how you can also put them to use in summer.
Josh has got the need to liquid feed.
If you have fast-growing, hungry crops like leafy greens, regular liquid fertilising provides a steady source of nutrients that can be taken up straight away.
I'm taking a tour with the designer of 3 very different but equally impressive green wall projects in South Brisbane.
Living architecture provides us with a range of technologies that we can use to bring nature into the built environment.
And I'm visiting a garden that belongs to one of the Gardening Australia producers. In between doing other people's gardens, he has spent time in his own suburban garden and he's transformed it into a native plant haven.
I love seeing when people go to the next level in their own backyard. Sophie's found a story with someone who's taken growing a few cuttings out the back and kicked it up a notch with the help of a few mates. Take a look.
Today I'm in Port Elliot, a picturesque seaside town on Horseshoe Bay, about an hour south of Adelaide. I'm visiting what might look like an ordinary block, but out the back is something very special. It's here that retired school principal and full-time home gardener Paul Sable works his magic. He's lived here for over 20 years, and together with his late wife Annette, they've transformed the place. Hello, Paul, this is amazing.
Oh, welcome, welcome.
What a riot of colour.
It is,
So what was here when you came here?
when we came here, this was just brown dirt and a few trees stuck in, fruit trees. Just dug them out and relocated them.
Now, I'm told that this isn't all there is to see. Your love of propagation has grown. Literally.
It has, yes. It gradually grew further and further out. So we're on 1.5 acres here, so gradually we could take up a bit more.
Wow, it keeps going and going.
Yes, up
Isn't
around
that
there.
stunning? It's his dedication to propagating that has seen him turn the rest of his yard into a massive propagation enterprise, cultivating thousands of plants which are then sold, raising thousands of dollars, all for worthy causes. Oh, wow. This is stunning.
Lots of colour.
All these geraniums and pelargoniums. So what's this area?
This is where we have our root stock and we take cuttings from, all these plants here.
And about how many cuttings would you get off a plant?
Oh, we take between 5 and 10. Some you could get more.
Now, this pelargonium here is stunning. Look at the size of the flowers. It looks like an azalea.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, very much like azalea. It has those little colours in the flower. Pelargoniums, or regal pelargoniums, they bloom once and then they make a wonderful show and they'll last about 3 months.
It's not just geraniums and pelargoniums that are propagated. Paul also has an extensive cactus and succulent collection.
Yes, there's a fair range of them and they're so interesting, aren't they? They send up flowers at different times of the year, so that's really great.
That's right, that's stunning, that one.
Yeah, that one's called a brain. It's got that limey green colour, isn't it?
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Type of euphorbia. And I can see behind us that there's all sorts of bromeliads too.
That's right, yes.
Is there anything you don't grow?
We've got a huge range.
You certainly do. It's impressive. Now, Paul, you're not just propagating a few plants, are you? How many plants would you propagate?
Oh, I don't know. Thousands, I suppose, yeah. That's
Every year?
Every year, yes. So, because we do markets all year round and we're selling all the time, so you've got to keep propagating all the time. But the biggest propagating time is autumn and winter, because when spring comes, you're busy selling, hopefully, selling them. But, yeah, we sell all year round.
Helping Paul with this massive undertaking are his friends, retired farmers, 91-year-old Rex and 84-year-old Claire Zacher.
Well, Friday I come here and help load up. Saturday's a market, Sunday's a market, and probably Tuesday we come back watering.
And because Paul is not really doing it for himself, he's doing it for a mission, I've got to do something.
All the money raised goes to the Australian Lutheran World Service, an overseas aid and development agency.
I suppose it's part of my passion as well. And so I don't think about how much money I've raised or how much I've sent away this year or how much altogether. Because to me, it's something I'm doing to help people, but it's also good for me. Yeah, so it's been good.
Have you ever worked out how much money you've raised for charity through your plant sales, approximately?
But so it's well over the $500,000, so that we've done over the years.
Is this a 7-day-a-week commitment?
It is a 7-day commitment, yeah. And yes, you can't just run off and have a holiday. In one way, I hope it inspires perhaps other people to do something that they really love and help others at the same time. And that's what it's done for us here.
He's just an angel. He's one of God's angels. He knows what to plant, when to plant. He's just a great fellow, and he's good to talk to.
A lot of people worry about when to pick a tomato to make sure it is at full flavour. They've got this vision of a vine-ripened fruit. But truthfully, I pick mine when they are just starting to flush any colour other than green. I bring them inside, put them in the fruit bowl, and within a few days, they start to ripen. It means that they're much less susceptible to getting attacked by caterpillars or even picked off by birds. And I promise you, if it's got a tiny bit of colour on it, in a few days, you'll be eating a beautifully tasty tomato.
Why do some trees grow straight up after being cut? Now, beneath the bark lie what are known as epicormic buds. And when trees are damaged by cutting or from fire, for instance, this activates the buds, which make shoots grow upwards to replace the parts of the tree known as leaders. Now, eucalyptus trees, widely found in Australia, have extensive epicormic buds which sprout following a fire. They're deep set beneath the bark, insulated from the intense heat that would kill other trees. It's all about survival.
Does bulb size matter? The size of a bulb does correlate to its stored resources, and therefore how big and prolific the flowers will be. A crocus, for example, has small, short flowers, and bulbs are only 4 to 5 centimetres. Whereas a hippeastrum, the bulbs can be 5 to 40 centimetres, with the larger producing much bigger and showier flowers. So ultimately, the bigger the bulb, the bigger the bloom.
Adding organic material in the form of compost is a good way to improve your soil over time. Organisms in the soil, like bacteria and fungi, break this material down, making nutrients available for plant roots to absorb. But if you have fast-growing, hungry crops like leafy greens, regular liquid fertilising provides a steady source of nutrients that can be taken up straight away. I use a combination of fish emulsion and liquid kelp, which gives a good mix of macro and micronutrients. Concentrations will vary between fertiliser products, so always follow the directions on the pack and measure out the doses. Over-fertilising is wasteful as the plants can't use the excess. You could also burn your plants. All the nutrients might leach into groundwater or run off into waterways. Liquid fertilising is also an effective nudge-along for plants that live in the root zone of larger trees and shrubs and have to compete with their dominant neighbours for the same nutrients in the soil. If they're looking hungry, give them a quick hit. It's also a good measure to address a nutrient deficiency in a plant. Soil amendments are important, but will need time to take effect. So in the short term, you can apply a foliar spray to the leaves. I find this is particularly good for citrus in alkaline soils, which often present with a range of trace element deficiencies. Again, always follow the directions for the product you're using to make sure you're applying the right amount to the right plants. It's not just your plants that will benefit from a liquid feed. The bacteria that drive the composting process also need nutrients to flourish. So if your pile's looking a little dry and stale, give it a good drenching with an organic, high nitrogen liquid fertiliser to really kick it along. And you'll be applying your compost to your garden for long-term soil and plant health in no time at all.
Now, we may be in late summer, but don't let these balmy days and long twilights fool you. Gardeners in cool climates know that summer can be a really fickle beast. Fortunately, Hannah's here with a way to keep the good times rolling and the summer crops a pumping.
The weather in Hobart can be a bit extreme, to say the least. So cold frames can be an essential part of growing veggies in a productive garden. They're like mini glasshouses that trap the heat and humidity to create a warm microclimate. They can be a really simple temporary box structure with a piece of glass on top, or you can make one with all the bells and whistles. I've got a cold frame at my own place, which I use all the time, but my new favourite is at my sister Jay's place, just around the corner in Hobart. This particular design is made from a simple timber frame and twin-wall polycarbonate sheeting attached to a hardwood timber bed. The height is almost 2 metres tall, which means plants of all shapes and sizes can thrive. Now, the roof actually comes off, so tomatoes, which are really tall in this case, can pop out the top. And it stays off in summer when you need more ventilation and less heat. These big doors can open all the way up for good access and even better ventilation. These nifty gas struts are fantastic at taking the weight of the door and keeping it open. It's been placed in an area which gets year-round sunlight, which is very important in cool, temperate Tasmania. I'm loving how they've got their veggies all in one space, which is really time and space efficient. It's good for small gardens or when you need lots of space for other things. And as an added bonus, it also protects against hungry wildlife and insects. Let's have a look at what's growing inside. We're months away from winter, so it's loaded with summer crops. We've got tomatoes, cucumber, mixed greens, and some capsicum. In cool climate Hobart, summers can still be a bit tricky for plants that need long-term warmth. And that's where cold frames can come in, delivering consistency for gardeners in the face of erratic weather. This is looking so lush and fantastic, but perhaps a little bit crowded for my liking. So it's time to do some summer jobs to make way for the autumn and winter crops. So it's time to do some thinning and pruning to make some room and get better air circulation. Otherwise, it can become the perfect haven for fungal diseases. We've got a lot of spring onions here. Luckily, you can just snip them off the base, use it in the kitchen, and then within a few weeks, a whole new plant will have grown up. I grow lots of my food from seed. In Tassie, we do this in summer to make sure we can eat all winter long. I'm sowing some leek seed, mitsuna, and sprouting broccoli. These punnets will go back into the cold frame where they'll benefit from the extra warmth. Then, once their roots are nice and established, they'll be planted out into the cold frame in mid to late autumn. You can see that a cold frame isn't just for winter. because it's a really useful, protected environment that'll keep your crops producing year-round.
Vegas, City of Lights, home to the mighty Brisbane River, the Broncos, Bluey, and of course, Jerry Colby Williams. Now, many of you wouldn't be aware that Brizzy has some of the finest examples of blending a glittering metropolis with stunning plant life. Jerry's looking up and he's taking the tour.
We're in South Brisbane, where shiny towers of glittering glass and powder-coated steel and reinforced concrete are battered by tunnelling winds as rivers of traffic stream below, belching out exhaust. It's not exactly the environment you'd expect to find rich tapestries of ferns, orchids and aeroids growing and thriving in. But on the interior and exterior of some of Brisbane's newest skyscrapers, that's exactly what's happening. And it's the result of the work of botanist and green wall designer Eric van Zalekom. Eddie? Last year, we visited Eric and his family at their Brisbane home, where the garden has become a test laboratory for his green wall plantings. Eric's carved a niche as a botanist working on high-profile urban greening projects he calls living architecture.
We're hardwired to respond well to scenes of nature. Living architecture provides us with a range of technologies that we can use to bring nature into the built environment. And that could be in the form of vertical gardens, roof gardens, green facades, planter boxes, etc.
Eric's now completed well over 1,000 vertical garden installations across both private and public buildings in our cities, breathing green life into our concrete chaos. Some of the most incredible examples of this green wave taking over our cities can be found within a short stroll of each other here in South Brisbane. Today, these gardens are undergoing routine horticultural upkeep. So Eric's taking me on a tour of 3 different locations so I can see up close and personal exactly what makes these gardens tick. Botanica is a 20-storey residential tower completed in 2015. Here, the showpiece is a 15-metre vertical garden using over 54 species and nearly 10,000 individual plants. The feeling is a slice of lushly detailed rainforest canopy, towering over the street below. What sort of work do you do with a vertical garden of this scale?
It's mainly shaping, reducing, and just keeping on top of pest and disease.
So in a sense, a lot of this is normal garden maintenance.
Yeah, just on the vertical.
Do animals make use of it as well?
Yeah, we've got a colony of lorikeets that live in this particular wall, and we also get possums quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
How frequently would you come up to do this?
4 times a year.
Now, nothing here uses soil.
No, this is a totally foam-based system. The only soil that is within the wall is just a little bit around the root ball when planted.
All of the gardens we're looking at run on hydroponic systems, largely out of necessity to keep weight loads down.
Just like anything you put on the side of a building, the wind could tear it down, a storm could cause damage, you could have irrigation leak, or a panel could come loose. For that reason, our system has to be extremely resilient. Not all plants just immediately work on the vertical. I have to use plants that have adaptations to thrive on the vertical plane. And you'll see behind us in these gardens, you might see umbrella trees, like Schefflerers. You might see ficus, which grow well in pots as well. Many of them might be a hemi-epiphyte that starts as a seedling high up in a tree canopy and then has no connection with the ground until later. And once you learn what the life story behind a species is, then you can understand what it's trying to do, and then you can use it appropriately.
There's also practical considerations when planning a landscape like this. The garden has floodlights mounted at the base to make it visible to pedestrians in the evening. This also required smaller plants to be used towards that base so as not to obscure the arc of the lights.
We need to be very mindful that, like humans, they need a sleep time, and having a floodlight can impact that. It can reduce the nighttime and create stress, but in this case we found a good balance here.
The next garden is at the Ivy Apartments. Built in 2017, it's on the front of a residential building, spanning across 3 stories, which also makes it the smallest. Were there any challenges designing this garden?
There certainly were, Jerry. It's a north-facing vertical garden, which means it gets plastered by sun, very hot and very windy as well at times. The host wall is divided into a range of different exposures, and each requires a different profile of species to manage those. Some will come from a cliff face, some will come from trees with high exposures, and we can draw on those, cobble them together into functional and dynamic groupings. The gardens are imbued with the ability to adapt and change their growth according to prevalent conditions. That's extremely helpful.
So where did you look for inspiration?
Across the globe. The places like South America, both parts of the Andes, the deserts and the rainforest, through Africa, Borneo, Ecuador, New Zealand and Australia. We have many representations of wonderful ecologies here that we can apply to the vertical.
The latest addition to Brisbane City's Green Mile is the Standard. Wow, we've got a tropical rainforest.
That's quite an impressive scale. You can see it from quite a distance.
It's so lush.
It is. The diversity allows us to do lots of interesting things too.
So this is the youngest garden we've seen today.
That's right. Completed in 2021. It's 410 square metres. It includes 68 species across around 9,300 plants or so. Quite a large one.
The garden is interspersed with decorative steel columns as part of the building's design, which, by happy coincidence, ended up being a functional wind buffer. This created a series of niches protected from the worst wind exposure, allowing Eric to use more sensitive species nestled beneath.
We've been able to use native orchids. We've been able to use cymbidiums as well that have struck foliage. They can handle the wind, but also can handle full sun, and they flower better with those higher exposures and a little bit more stress.
Lauded in architecture awards, it's also home to the largest fire-compliant green wall in Australia.
So it's been designed in a particular way to replace components so that they won't combust, which means we've removed plastics. We use an aluminium backing that attaches to the wall, and we use a very special type of felt that's been impregnated with carbon, which is more fire resistant. The engineering of the building is such that it incorporates a much narrower profile vertical garden type with a panel that is very, very narrow. So all the plants you see are only growing in a substrate that's about 2 centimetres deep.
Now, I see you're a fan of rabbit's foot fern. Why is that?
It's a very adaptable species, and the kind of rhizomes that it has can root at the nodes, which means that it's a species that can spread and root directly into the felt, giving it a lot of structural stability, but it can meander through and between plants and create a wonderful foliage stacking system for us to use.
And I never expected to see Lomandra.
And this particular Lomandra grows very well riparian conditions, so next to water as well, or strong flowing water, and that lends itself quite well to use in a vertical garden. And in this case, you can see the conditions are such that its growth form has changed a bit. It cascades a lot more than upright growth that you would have with a full day of sunshine from above.
These breathtaking gardens offer a sort of optimistic retrofit of our increasingly problematic urban environments. One where we can welcome nature back into the fold, into even the most workaday corners of our hectic lives.
Nature is the pinnacle of design. It's used millions of years to refine how species work together and the processes that underpin how they work in habitat. Watch this space, learn, record, and we'll adapt with it into the future.
It's hard to think of a plant that is tougher than this. It's got the common name of cast iron plant. It's an aspidistra, and it really is one of the most bomb-proof indoor plants in low light or outdoors in a shaded spot. It's so tough that my mum even managed to grow this plant. We never had any plants, except there was always one of these behind the door being completely neglected. The truth is, I've neglected this one quite a lot too. It's been growing outdoors, and you can see the snails have absolutely shredded it. But the other thing about this is it's actually quite a special variety. You can see when I pull away all of that old foliage, you can see this is a variegated aspidistra. It has lovely white and green parallel veins. It's a really popular ornamental plant, and I'm losing that variegation. When you look at it, it just looks green. Now, the solution to saving that variegation is actually to divide it up, and I'm going to show you how. Oh, wow, you can see that is absolutely jam-packed. Now, this is a rhizotomous plant, which means it grows by spreading rhizomes just underneath the soil surface, but here it's actually on top. It's been in this pot so long that basically the potting mix has been completely consumed. It's completely broken down. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually clean out the worst of this tatty growth so I can see what I've got to work with. So you can see now that I've cleared it out that there's actually lots and lots of rhizomes. It's extremely tight in that pot. And the variegation will often be strongest on new growth. And when it's that tight, it's really not growing with nice fresh shoots. So I'm just going to cut away some of those rhizomes and cut these plants apart. You can use a sharp old knife, a bread knife works really well, and just try and get down through that clump and identify where some of the most beautiful variegated plants actually are. I'm just going to try and tease apart a few significant clumps and then I'll pot them up and they can grow away to put on a really good show. You can see that that's got quite a bit of good colour on it. So I'm going to leave that as a single clump. I might take that leaf off so it doesn't blow around and I'll pot that up. To pot them up, I'm making a simple mix. 3 parts premium potting mix to 1 part perlite. I'm just positioning it quite centrally because I want that new growth to come and radiate out, which is where I'm going to get that nice foliage. And I'm sitting it quite proud of the soil surface. And then on the surface, I'm just putting a really fine gravel mulch so those shoots can still push through. It'll look nice and protect that soil surface and those shoots when you water it. Well, there's no doubt we all neglect a few plants, me probably more than others, but lucky for us, they're really forgiving. I potted it on, a new lease of life, and this will be absolutely gorgeous again in no time.
Still to come on Gardening Australia, Tammy gets crafty and turns over a new leaf. Clarence is feeling kind of blue. And we meet 3 generations sharing a garden and a culture. Imagine working with us at Gardening Australia. You travel all around the country, get invited to some of the best gardens and meet the inspiring people behind them. You even get to hang out with Jane Edmondson. But what happens when you get back home? What would you do at your place? Let's find out.
OK, opening piece to camera. You ready, Jane?
Yep.
OK, and action.
When I'm doing a story, you usually see it only from this side of the camera. This time, we're going behind the scenes to take a look at a garden that belongs to one of the producers on Gardening Australia. I've worked with Albert for many years, doing stories from all over the place, and I'm really excited to see what he's been up to in his own garden.
And cut.
Yay! We last visited Albert's place in Deer Park in Melbourne's western suburbs back in 2017, when he was busy stripping his garden.
Hopefully it'll survive.
Everything, including roses, apples, citrus and veggie beds, were removed and relocated so he could create a blank canvas and start all over again. How have you done things differently this time around?
Well, the main thing I've done is I did a plan and I've thought about it a lot more before I just rushed into plant things. And also I have achieved a bit of my life's goal, which is to do a semi-formal native garden.
And why did you choose that sort of style?
Partly in reaction to where I live, where there's not many gardens around me, and so there's not much for wildlife or birds, and I'm pretty conscious of that. I was hoping that if there were lots of local natives from my area, that it would attract the wildlife that go with those plants. I was really keen to do that.
The block is 420 square metres and is dominated by a large house. The garden wraps around with a large space out the back and narrow areas either side.
This is a side garden and it's pretty narrow. As you can see, it's only really an arm span across.
Yeah. It's lovely though. I think the repetition of all the plants is really good.
Well, I didn't want to have too many species, so there's only 3. There's the coria hedge.
Yeah.
There's the poas either side, which are local species.
Yeah, and flowering, look at that.
And flowering.
Wow.
And also there's the clistamon wilderness white, which have white flowers.
Yeah.
And I'm espaliering those so they hug the fence.
So if ever they dare to grow out here, you just go chop.
Absolutely, because if I let them go, they would just be out here.
Yes.
And because it's a limited space, I want to make sure that everything, allows access and acts politely together. This is the back garden. And so one of the first things I did when I redid everything was put in this footpath, which is recycled bricks either side with crushed sandstone. It's very straight. So to counteract that, I did the coria hedge. And the coria hedge does this serpentine pattern across the path to sort of break it up.
Yeah, and do you leave it to flower and then prune it back?
Yes. Yeah. I'm reasonably tough on it because I know if you let it go, it'll get really big.
Yeah.
Because it's coria alba, so I do try to keep it nice and low. So as it sort of does those curves, it gives me places to plant in. So in this garden, as well as having some just standard Australian natives, I wanted to really champion local plants from the area. So there's a lot of plants here which are from the Western Plains of Melbourne.
Yeah.
Because, they're sort of lost because there's been so much development here.
Yeah.
You don't see so many of them anymore. So I really wanted to, make them heroes of this garden.
And the colour scheme you've got is really pleasant to be in.
It's meant to be a relaxing haven in my backyard, so all the colours are cool colours. It's all silvers, greys, purples, blues, which made it challenging when I was looking for plants because everything had to fit that parameter.
So no oranges or reds or yellows?
No. Because my previous garden I had in here was like this chaotic cottage garden. It was roses and it was lavender hedges, everything was jammed in together. So this time around I wanted to be more disciplined and I...
This is typical Albert, See his blue folder and the red biro? Well, that is typical Albert. He ticks and crosses and do it again. And that's very good. I like it. So it's a disciplined garden.
It is.
Where are we up to on the script, Albert?
Well, we're doing pretty well. We've still got voiceovers to do.
Fair enough.
But yeah, we're doing pretty well.
Good.
I think just got to work a bit harder.
Oh. This one's doing beautifully.
Look, I do love a native hibiscus, allergine, because those flowers, look at those purple flowers.
Yeah.
And I'll reflect that purple of flowers in the purple bench over there.
And then the grey leaf, again. This is great.
It's an olearia.
Yes. This is one I like, tea trees.
Yep. This is a local leptospermum from this area. And I have tried to keep things pruned. And not every plant's happy to be pruned. You can see with the native hibiscus, originally I tried to make like a hedge and it wasn't happy being a hedge.
No, I'm not going to be a hedge, not for Albert. I'm not even going to do it for him. But it's nice. It's still got plenty of new growth and new flowering. That's good.
But I have to keep it contained because it gets enormous.
Too big.
And because it's quite shallow rooted, the bigger I let it go, it's like a big sail.
Yes.
So
and the same with the tea tree, I'd say. Just keep it pruned and that looks really good. And that's a great thing, the bursarias.
Oh, they're my favourites. Actually, all these plants here were grown from tube stock.
Wow.
So, 4 years ago, they were tube stock about this big. And that's what they are now. The Bursaria must be like 4 metres high now.
Bursaria spinosa. I like its name.
And I've grown a bit back in the path because they're very spiky. I wanted a eucalypt which wasn't going to get too big because it's quite a narrow space. It's only about...
It is, 2 or 3 metres.
2 or 3 metres. And I was worried with eucalypts particularly, I didn't want to choose the wrong species and have this enormous tree in 20 years in my backyard.
So you've pruned it?
I have pruned it.
Not sure.
I know.
I think it'll come good. It just looks a bit sort of bare, doesn't it, at the moment? But I think it will come good. You've got new shoots here, and that's good. This is a beauty, though. Where does it come from originally?
Near Canberra. It's a Walgan snow gum.
Oh, I like the trunk.
It's beautiful, isn't it? So, and it's a mallee eucalypt, which means a lignant tuber, and lots of shoots come from the base. But I want a single trunk, so every time another shoot comes up, I prune it off.
You're asking a lot of this little plant.
Oh, well, it's still growing.
Good on you, Albert. So you're telling people, don't worry about pruning?
Give it a go. I know. I think don't be scared, because things will grow back eventually.
This is a very popular eucalypt, and it's a beauty.
This is Eucalyptus crenulata. So it's a Victorian native. And I've chosen because it's a small eucalypt and because I wanted to grow them in pots.
And it's got that silvery blue look again. In fact, it's called the Victorian silver gum.
The only thing, every year it gets eaten by moths. So you can see cocoons here.
Yes.
And all these skeletonized leaves.
Yes.
So when that first happened, I thought, oh. So I consulted a moth expert to find out what they were.
Yeah.
And they're a ribbed case moth, so the local moth.
Ah, there's the little case moth.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're gorgeous, aren't they?
And the advice was, if I could stand it, to let them eat leaves because, you know, they need all the help they can get.
Wow, because moths are really important. Remember we did that story at night, the moth story, and it was really good because it was so pertinent that we have to be careful of moths because they're great pollinators.
And also they're food source for wildlife.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he said, if you can stand it, let the moths eat leaves.
Yeah.
And that's what I do now. Every year, pretty much, they eat almost all the leaves on the
and
trees.
they'll come good. Look at that.
They come
That's
good.
the old one, and there's the new ones there that are coming good.
Yeah.
Now, this is a different one for me. I don't know it.
It's a local plant. It's Gynatrix pulchella.
Okay.
And I got it because I wanted to screen the fence, and it grows to about 2.5 metres high.
Oh, so good, really good and high.
Yeah.
It screened this fence beautifully. So why are these looking like they are?
Well, you know, I do love a prune, perhaps a bit too much, but also because they were really tall and they were in danger of blowing over. But it's a good example of, you know, a local Indigenous plant that most people wouldn't heard of, and really pretty. You can see he's got these tiny little cream flowers.
Yeah, no, they're good.
So, and it's a good screening plant.
Yeah.
This is the far side garden, and it's only about, like, you know, maybe a metre wide, so it's very narrow.
And it's one of those places that everyone always forgets about.
Well, because it's either full shade or it's full sun. It's really tough.
Very difficult. And what's the soil like over here?
Oh, it's complete clay. You know. So what I've done is I've planted a row of clistamon down the side of the fence.
They're doing well.
They are. And I had to use an auger to dig a hole for the poor things.
Oh, my goodness.
And they've tolerated it.
Yeah. Then this wall here looks really good.
Rather than looking at a colorbond fence, I did screening and I did this lattice and I'm just hanging plants off it. So I've got a native dichondra.
Yeah.
And
Bromeliads.
lots of bromeliads. Of course, the good old Hardenbergia.
Which is a local.
Which is a local plant, and that's in the clay soil as well, and it's just beautiful because it just sprawls, have those amazing purple flowers.
Yeah. So it's a whole other area that you can have a garden in.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe ask me why I like gardening, I think. For the
do you think?
Yeah, for the end of the story.
Right, okay. So why do you actually like gardening?
Greenery around me makes me feel good, and it reassures me that no matter what might happen elsewhere in the world, how terrible it might be, you know, as long as I've got my little patch of plants doing their thing and wildlife, that I've figured that's something, and that sort of reassures me.
What else can we ask him? Oh dear, oh dear. No, it's all good, Albert.
Nature really is the greatest artist. Everywhere I look, I'm totally blown away by the tiny, intricate details in the plants all around us. Tammy's found a creative way to unlock some of this beauty and get your creative juices flowing.
Have you ever been walking along in the bush and come across a dried skeleton of a leaf? If you pick it up and take a look, you'll notice that all the soft tissue has fallen away, leaving an intricate lace-like design. This is perfect for a simple craft I'll show you, where you can create a beautiful preserved leaf that can be used in all sorts of artworks. For the best results, choose leaves that have a strong vein system. Tougher, more waxy leaves are better than softer, younger leaves. First, clean the leaves, ensuring they're free of any dirt. Now, if you have the luxury of time, you can simply soak the leaves in water and leave them for about 3 weeks. The tissue will eventually decompose. But if you're impatient like me, you can fill a saucepan with about 1 litre of water and add 3 tablespoons of washing soda and simply pop your leaf in that. Bring it to a boil, then reduce to a simmer and top up with boiling water so that the leaf is always covered. Stir it from time to time. The water will become a little bit murky.
This one has been simmering for 1.5 hours. So I've taken it off the heat to show you.
You'll notice that the leaf tissue starts to peel away. Then you can take it out and put it into a shallow tray of clean, warm water. Using a toothbrush or a paintbrush, gently brush away at the softened tissue, and this will reveal the veins. Then put the clean leaf skeleton on a paper towel to dry in a warm, sheltered spot for about an hour. Once it's completely dry, place it between 2 paper towels and store it under a heavy book until you're ready to use it. Now for the fun part, decorating. If you like, you can spray paint your leaf skeleton. I've chosen gold and I'm going to mount it onto a piece of black card, which will be a real statement piece.
After you've painted your leaf, stick it to the card using glue that dries clear. It's a delicate operation, so use the glue sparingly. Once the glue is dry, the card is ready for display.
The possibilities are endless with these skeleton leaves. Put them onto greeting cards, use them to make cool earrings, or you can even stick them onto Easter eggs. So give it a try and make something beautiful, inspired by nature.
It's easy to spot the colour blue in the bush. It's one of nature's rarest colours because it's really difficult to produce. Only 10% of flowering plants on the planet have blue flowers, and bees love them. Scaevolas, or fan flowers, bloom from spring to autumn and will spill over pots or hanging baskets. Growing as a lush ground cover, they form a wide mat. So give them some room to move. They like a sunny spot and good drainage and can handle the dry. They'll take a little bit of frost from time to time and even salty sea winds. Another option is Leschenoltia. These guys hail from WA and need a sunny spot with excellent drainage. So work best in a container if you're not on sandy soil. While they can be hard to grow, they are easy to propagate. An East Coast blue native is Isotoma, once called Laurentia. They love full sun and will reward you with long-lasting flowers all the way from spring through to autumn. They like well-drained soil and look great planted en masse, especially with something yellow. Dampiera is from the same family as Leschenoltia and loves sun or light shade and a well-drained, warm spot in the garden. These guys mingle beautifully with other plants and can form some stunning colour combos. It's well worth a go. You may have seen these guys planted in nature strips by local councils. They're tough as. It's hard to beat Dianellas. They're strappy leaves, blue flowers, and for a double dose of blue, blueberries. They'll handle sun or part shade, dry or frosty, sandy or clay. Blue was once the preserve of gods or royals, but these days, you can have your own high-status colour and enjoy it in your garden every day.
There's something special about a family enjoying a garden together, growing plants, trading stories, cooking food, and, of course, making memories. Our next story's with a family who've built a garden and they're using it to strengthen the bond between generations.
I'm Ria. This is my husband, Alex. We have 2 daughters, AJ and Erin, and my parents are Linda and Jose. We live in Aintree, one of the suburbs in Melbourne's west.
We used to live in a tiny place, so we wanted to have a bit bigger space for our plants. We moved here and start planting bit by bit and become more and more plants, and we wanted to have more plants.
We grow a lot, like from ornamental, vegetables. We got trees, citrus trees, a lot of kumquats, a lot of succulents, perennial basil, mint, you name it. I'm a permanent night duty nurse in one of the busiest hospitals in Melbourne. And when I come home from a very long night shift, I don't go in the front door. I go around to the backyard. It is a stress reliever to see the garden. Everything resets from an overwhelming night. It's just total bliss and total happiness when I'm in my garden.
I was working as a head chef in the city, and in the restaurant it's really noisy and, busy. You need some kind of quiet place to, to have. Our garden, it reminds me of my childhood when you are not thinking about paying your mortgage and stuff, I love, growing more and more plants. It's kind of addictive. It comes from my blood. We come from the family who's planting a lot of plants way back home in the Philippines. When I was a kid, I was working with my mom and my dad. They asked me to do watering of watermelons and stuff like that.
I grew up in one of the small village in the Philippines. It's called Las Ud. They do farming. Like from childhood until now, we have just been surrounded with plants, with crops. My parents does a lot with our garden, from watering to propagating from seeds. Mom loves orchids. Back home, we got lots of wild orchids. So when we came over here, we have to get some orchids for her. We have a lot of kumquats in the Philippines. We call it calamansi. It's always a part of our cuisine. But we have just the green variety there. And when we came over to Australia, I saw these variegated kumquats. We usually make kumquat juice. It is just made up of kumquats, a syrup, and mint. So we got these 8 kumquats now in our small backyard. I really wanted to show my kids how plants, how trees are important with the way we live. We got all year-round parsley, onion leaves, and perennial basil. So the girls are making this simple pasta, which is inspired by TikTok.
We've seen a lot of videos of it. Yeah, I guess we love how simple it is to cook and it also tastes really good. So we're garnishing it with parsley that we've grown in our garden.
Our garden makes our family closer together. We have this bonding. We have lots of conversation regarding plants. It's a learning journey too.
Okay, don't get too comfortable, snap out of it, because it's time for your list of jobs for the weekend. Cool temperate gardeners, it's passata time. Clean your bottles, gather family and friends, fire up the tomato press and put those paste tomatoes to good use. You'll be enjoying the taste of summer for months. Sow some swede seed. A cross between a turnip and a cabbage, swedes are easy to grow and ready to harvest in about 12 weeks. Grate into salad and eat raw or cook as a potato substitute. While the soil's still warm, pop in some kangaroo paws. Planting now allows them to establish and form healthy clumps before winter, and they'll bounce into beautiful flower come spring. Sedums are a staple in warm temperate gardens, but it's time for a tidy up. Prune them to the ground now that they've flowered. It might seem tough, but they'll thank you for it. Spice it up and plant out garlic cloves for summer harvest. Into well-prepared, rich, fluffy soil, pop in a mix of early, mid and late season garlic varieties to keep you in cloves all year. Pumpkin vines are dying off and pumpkins are ready to be harvested as the stems dry. It's a good idea to leave part of the stem attached as it helps them store for longer and prevent rot. Subtropical gardeners sow some carrot seeds into light, fluffy soil. To stop them coming up in clumps, mix the fine seed with sand and tip evenly into shallow trenches. Cover lightly and water in. Rose growers give plants a light prune this weekend, followed by a feed of organic fertiliser, a good water and fresh mulch to encourage another flush of fragrant flowers in about 8 weeks' time. If you're keen to have a go at broad beans, sow them now as they need cool weather to set fruit. The beautiful red flowering varieties seem to be better performers in warm climates. Still got some space in the veggie patch? Why not pop in a tiny tom or two? Varieties like cherry currant, Scorpio, Thai egg and tomato are tough as in the tropics and tasty to boot. A winner in warmer climates and the perfect pal for your tiny toms is sweet basil. Tops in pots and plots, plant into soil full of pelletised manure and you'll be making pesto in no time. The iconic ivory curl flower has finished its summer flowering and is due for a tip prune. Remove spent flowers and lightly trim all over to maintain shape and size. In arid zones, it's the perfect time to plant okra. Harvest young leaves and pods from 8 weeks for use in soups and stews, while older pods can be pickled or blanched. A squiggly silvery lines appearing on the surface of your citrus foliage, you've got leaf miner. To treat, spray foliage with a horticultural oil early in the morning and remove damaged leaves. Have a grow at a pepino, a fast-growing fruit related to the tomato. Best grown as a climber, they will quickly reward with apple-sized fruits that taste like a refreshing rockmelon cucumber cross. Have a happy, healthy, productive weekend, gardeners, and don't forget to let us know what you've been up to on